What's up, friends? Welcome to this live edition of Syracuse Sports, a Syracuse football training camp update. You've got Brent Axe. You've got Chris Carlson. We brought Carlson off the bench, giving Jamad Edmonds a bye on this particular episode of the pod. Hello, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing great. Doing great.
Good to see you. We've got a few different things to discuss today, including the possible addition of it's kind of a meet the old receiver, same as the old receiver type of thing in this new world we're in, where fifth-year guys are all of a sudden fifth-year guys.
Yep.
People we thought were gone, people we thought were moving on one way or the other, either to the professional ranks or, in the case of Justus Ross-Simmons, into the real world. This is a guy who's looking to come back based on the results of many lawsuits out there. And I think it's going to happen. So I'm losing track of all the lawsuits out there. So we'll just say lawsuits and we'll kind of focus it on that. So that is a very interesting thing. I think it would be a great addition for Syracuse. We're going to listen to what Fran Brown had to say about that and a couple other things here shortly. We're going to focus in on somebody I think is one of the more interesting additions to this team, one of the more important additions on the defense. And Keyshawn Johnson, Chris did a great job writing about that in his newsletter. Make sure you guys subscribe to that. Comes out on Mondays for Syracuse football fans, and a few reactions from our Syracuse Sports Insiders. As always, being an insider gives you direct text message access to me anytime with your Syracuse football questions, your Syracuse football comments. When we walk off the practice field, the first thing we do is let our insiders know what we saw at camp. You guys have been getting little videos that, I am no Martin Scorsese, but I've been trying to put together a few more videos for the insiders and scrapping that together. So our insiders always get that stuff and get it first. And we love to hear what you want to know from Syracuse football camp. And we've got some thoughts from them coming up here shortly. It's just $3.99 a month to be a Syracuse Sports Insider. And we hope that you can sign up today. Great time of year to get back on board here and get all your thoughts out there about Syracuse football. All right, Chris. So Friday night, while I was enjoying, I believe it was the Toadies were on stage when this was starting to break.
And I was at a wedding.
You were at a wedding. We're Chris and Brent still getting those last summer things out of our system before we hone in and lock in on football. Justus Ross-Simmons comes out that he wants a fifth year at Syracuse. Interesting case in that he did not get into a pro camp, because some of these situations, like we've been talking about with the Syracuse lacrosse players that want to come back to Syracuse, they are now professional lacrosse players. So that's a whole other lawsuit. And you have other people that have gone to pro camps, been cut, and want to come back as fifth-year players. There are some basketball players that actually went to the G League, skipped over college entirely, and want to come back. Sorry to confuse everybody out there. There'll be a quiz later, but that's what makes this discussion so interesting, is what the parameters of your particular lawsuit is. Justus Ross-Simmons just wants a fifth year, did not play in the pros at all, was not in a summer camp. We confirmed through the weekend that the sides are talking. Mm-hmm. Today, Fran Brown hit the podium, and you'll hear Chris actually ask a few questions here and gave us the latest on what's going on. So let's listen to that. Here's what Fran Brown had to say about this. This was about 1 o'clock this afternoon after Syracuse football practice.
With our football team overall, and just seeing how that works out with our school, right? It's got to be an academic, student athlete, so the student piece has to go together and the athletic part. So we're just saying, weighing our options out to see if that'll be something that we should do.
So last week, it didn't sound like you wanted to add somebody.
Yep.
What changed sort of your mind over the past week?
Our team, just the team, the team coming to communicate and things of that nature. So just communicating with the team.
Did the guys say they wanted him, or was it just you hadn't had a chance to tell them and you wanted to tell them you were interested before you told them?
No, anything that come from the team. I already had told you I didn't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And then after listening to our team and just going through stuff and just weighing options and seeing if that'll work. But at the point right now, we're just trying to see if that'll be something that's possible. It would be helpful because we would be able to help him finish his degree and then help him with football. But we're just some things that we got to figure out first before that goes from our administration standpoint and things of that nature. So that's what we got for that.
All right, so we're going to come back to Fran Brown in a bit here. All right, we're going to come back to let me get the right screen up there. There's Chris. We'll come back to Fran Brown in a bit because he had some comments about the quarterbacks as well. Chris, after hearing Fran say that, kind of where are we at with this? What's your thought here?
So the key word that I feel like I heard is we have to do some things from an administrative standpoint,
Right.
Which to me means Fran wants Justus Ross-Simmons back. Justus Ross-Simmons, who I spoke to a couple weeks ago, and said he was certainly open to coming to Syracuse. And it would be much simpler to come to Syracuse than trying to go back in the portal and figure things out at this late notice. I have to think Justus Ross-Simmons would like to come back. And it sounds like it is a situation where Fran just does not want to jump in front of the school and say that Fran Brown declares that Justus Ross-Simmons has been allowed back in Syracuse University and is a student. And it sounds like they're just taking care of some of things, those dotted I's, crossed T's, that sort of thing.
That was certain. I want to stress this is my opinion. That was my takeaway. Because he didn't dismiss it. He didn't say, we talked, it's not going to work out. He didn't say, now you brought it up when we asked him at the beginning of camp what he thought about adding any fifth-year players. This was not specifically about Justus Ross-Simmons. He said, no, we're good. We've got our team, right? But adding Justus Ross-Simmons makes sense. He clearly had a connection with Steve Angeli last year. This is a guy who had 5 touchdowns in 8 games. Now, he missed 4 games last year. He was limited in 4 others. So let's keep that in mind. Justus Ross-Simmons, while he had productive numbers for an offense that went off the cliff after Steve Angeli got hurt, 20 catches, 312 yards, 5 touchdowns in 8 games. And as mentioned, I think anybody that watched this team early last year when Angeli was healthy could see a connection between the two. What Justus Ross-Simmons brings to this room, Chris, is experience with the starting quarterback, and experience, period. Because I just want to put this into perspective here. Just hang with Uncle Brent for a minute here. These were the leading receivers on the team last year. Jonte Cook had 45 catches for 549 yards. Darrell Gill Jr., 32 catches, 506 yards. Dan Villari, 39 catches, 412 yards. Here's Justus Ross-Simmons. He was the 4th leading receiver on the team, but tied for a lead in touchdowns. 20 catches, 312 yards. Will Nixon was the 5th leading receiver on this team last year with 26 catches, 187 yards. Emmanuel Ross, Jalen Hornsby. Those are your top 7 receivers. The leading receiver, who are all gone, the leading receiver that was set to come back for this team was Darian Williams, who had 8 catches for 101 yards. Okay. So to add Justus Ross-Simmons back on that list, because while there is talent in this room and depth in this room, which we're going to go over here shortly, what it lacks, Chris, is experience at the Division I Power 4 level. And it lacks experience. Now they can do all the reps they want through spring, summer, and now fall camp and get on the same page, which they're starting to do. But at least Justus Ross-Simmons can walk in the door literally tomorrow if he wants to. And he knows Steve Angeli. Steve Angeli knows him. And let's hit the ground running.
And we saw last year, right? He has tremendously strong hands. He is, the back shoulder throw to him. He is really capable of snatching the ball out of the air. He's a good receiver when he's healthy. Now, the caveat is when healthy. And then there's a little bit of also, what type of shape he's coming in.
Right.
He's been working out and trying to stay in shape, but he's also been working normal jobs. He's worked a number of jobs to help, just make money, including trucking. So he's not been devoted to football training the way that everybody else in that locker room has. He doesn't cost you anything to bring in. He's worth a look. So I like the pickup, but I think it is a little unclear, whether you're getting peak Justus Ross-Simmons or, how long it's going to take him to be ready.
I think that's a good point, that he has been working out, but he's not in football shape. He has not been in training camp official. There's a difference when you're in official workouts and you're in the rooms, in the film room, all that stuff versus being just in shape. So, but again, this is a 5th-year guy who I think can walk in and pick up on those things. And we've still got a few weeks here till New Hampshire on September 5th. This is good timing. He's not coming in game week. He's coming in 2 weeks before game week.
And the first game week is also like a 3rd week of practice if it needs to be. He is physically, he's a specimen, right? He is a very strong looking,
definitely
young man. So he has those advantages coming in.
Yeah. You're not opening with Tennessee. You're opening with New Hampshire, which let's be honest, is essentially another. It's a preseason game that's going to count for Syracuse in opening week. We should stress that Justus Ross-Simmons will not be taking anybody's roster spot. A Syracuse spokesperson confirmed that with us. This is not a case of you're in, he's out. Now, the timing of it's interesting, Chris, because we learned today, Fran Brown confirmed for us, Terrell Wilfong is out 6 to 8 weeks with a broken collarbone. This is somebody who, you wrote about this a bit today on syracuse.com, if people want to get a little background, had a terrific spring game.
Yep.
By all accounts, was having a great summer, and we had seen and heard some buzz in camp. We had seen him in camp. He's lengthy, is a good way to put it. He's making some good catches. He's a deep threat. He's somebody that people were really excited about, that certainly looked to be in the receiver rotation. But he's now out 6 to 8 weeks. So it's not a apple for apple replacement, but Justus Ross-Simmons comes in at a good time here. Even though there's some depth in that room, that's a nice replacement for the style of play that he was bringing to the table.
And they are a little beat up at that position otherwise too, right? Calvin Russell, we know Calvin is going to miss a good chunk of the year at minimum. Darian Williams has missed a lot of training camp, or at least maybe not missed, but he's been non-contact for a lot of training camp. He was injured a lot last year. So I don't know how worried they are about his availability. Tyshawn Russell was doing conditioning today. So they are deep with bodies that we think look like they can do the job, but they're also starting to get a little banged up there, and another option doesn't hurt.
Let's go back in that room a little bit. So I went over the leading receivers from last year. Top 7 all gone. If Justus Ross-Simmons comes back, then that's 1 out of that 7 that returns. Okay. We mentioned Will Fong's out. Amari Hatcher, by all accounts, is a great connection with Steve Angeli. We started to see a flash of his talent before he got hurt. He does have experience, but he has to prove he's healthy, right? And I look forward to, there's always a member of the Hatcher family that's in my YouTube comments, so shout out to them. They're very passionate about Amari and his future here at Syracuse. I think even they have to admit, we got to see it. We got to see that he's healthy and ready to contribute. He has earned an orange jersey. So just a reminder for those of you checking out the pod here that maybe have heard a little bit about this. Offensive players have been earning orange jerseys in camp, is essentially like, I think these are people that are claiming either starting spots or prominent roles, or are being rewarded for the camp that they're having one way or the other.
They're in the mix to be
defense,
starters, was how
correct.
Fran sort of defined it. So they're certainly on the 2 deep, pushing for the top.
So Hatcher's on that list, and on defense, it's black jerseys that have been the standouts in camp. So Hatcher, I put him right at the top of the list. Let's see what you got. He spent a lot of time on the sideline with Steve Angeli last year, forging a connection, but we just have to see it. Cole Weaver, productive receiver at Miami, Ohio. I love this pickup. I think he fits exactly what Jeff Nixon's offense wants to do. He's 6'5". He's listed at 6'5", maybe 6'4"-ish, as we're going to get into with another player here shortly about what they're listed at, what they're really in the real world if they, sat next to you on a bar stool. But Cole Weaver has no Power 4 experience. Zamondre Mayweather, heard some good things. Seen some talent. I liked what I've seen in camp. No Power 4 experience. Boobie Johnson, great talent, highly regarded, should have a role in the rotation. Young player, just has to prove himself. You mentioned Darian Williams, Tyshawn Russell. Elijah Moore has 14 games of Power 4 experience at Florida State. So you got to really go down the list here. I didn't mention Julian McFadden, who earned an orange jersey. He was hurt last year, though. Matthew Outen, who scratched the surface at Penn State, but doesn't have any serious time on the field. So everybody looks and hears that list, and that's a good list. There's a lot of talent there. And in the old basketball adage comes to mind for me, Chris. There's only one football. Like, how are you going to get the ball to all those guys? That's a good problem to have, though. What they don't have, though, is Syracuse, as you noted to me, I believe our friend David Hale wrote about this. They're the second least experienced team in the ACC. So there's a lot of guys in the wide receiver room alone that just have to, they don't know what they don't know about playing at the Power 4 level. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. That's a cheap way to approach the portal, right? Syracuse is probably not at a place where it is going out and it is taking a proven Power 4 guy. So they're taking guys and trying to stack a room and betting that some of them pan out, right? It's like panning for gold. You put enough rocks in there and you're probably going to hit 2 or 3 and you're going to have a good room. but they have nobody that has done much at the Power 4 level. So we'll see.
And I think if you're a fan out there, just to look at this from an objective perspective, what do coaches say all the time? We're doing everything we can to improve this football team. This is literally a case of it. You may not like these lawsuits. You may not like that players are getting fifth years. You may not like the system as it stands. There's been a lot of discussion about that. There's been a bill that's sitting in the Senate and Congress that they're going to reconvene on when they return from their lengthy August break here, the Protect College Sports Act, and a number of things to reform college athletics, which we've been talking about for years. So you may not like what's the old expression? Don't hate the player, hate the game. Man, I like the game, but Fran Brown's looking at it saying, wait, I can get Justus Ross-Simmons back on my team. Why wouldn't I do that? And I don't blame him for that at all. So whether you like the game or not, that is what it is. And he can literally say, I'm trying to make my team better. And it's not just coach speak. He is. That makes your team, that if he walks in the door, that makes your wide receiver room better, flat out.
This does. You know, the only things, right? The only two concerns when you add a player is do you have to cut somebody? And in this case, they don't. Mm-hmm. And, you know, what does it do to sort of the team dynamic? And in this case, when you're not cutting a player, like it's a coach making his team better. So like you might not love it, but like I'm making the team better and that's my job.
Even if it came at the expense of somebody, it's a little different in college these days, but we see this in the NFL all the time during training camp, right? This guy's cut, in walks another guy. They try out people every week. The line has been blurred between college athletics and professional athletics because of obviously these guys get paid now. College is still not quite that cutthroat, but I've seen tweets this week. Now they're being dismissed for other reasons, but coaches that are dismissing players from the team. It can happen, but it's not in this case. Justus Ross-Simmons is not taking anybody's spot. You do have to, and this is what Fran Brown gets paid for. This is what Josh Gaddis, who's a highly regarded wide receiver coach, has to deal with the dynamics of the room and the chemistry. And it's always interesting. I think of that scene from Miracle when they're about to start the Olympics, Herb Brooks signs the hotshot youngster just to kind of mess with his team and see what they do to react with it. And they all kind of bond together like, no, Herb, this is our team. So you don't want that to happen if you're the Syracuse wide receivers. But I think there's enough people left on this roster that have the respect for Justus Ross-Simmons. Isn't somebody you're bringing in from another school just out of the blue. He's got skin in the game at Syracuse, and I think people will appreciate that.
Yep.
Switching gears a little bit, Chris, we did talk to Fran, as mentioned. I want to go back to him here because we're getting into the point of camp where they're still a couple weeks away from game week, and maybe they're going to wait until after the next scrimmage to declare who the number 2 is behind Steve Angeli. But here are the latest comments from Fran about his quarterbacks, Malachi Nelson and Amari Odom. They had a scrimmage on Saturday at the JMA Dome. It was closed to the media, close to most people. There was a great season ticket holder event. They got to get autographs and selfies and meet the team on Saturday, which was great. But the scrimmage itself was closed. So we don't have a lot of what happened in that scrimmage. But here's Fran on his 2 quarterbacks here. Let's take a listen.
Malachi has a good ball. Like, he can throw the ball well far. Malachi's doing a good job. He's a good kid. Very happy to have him here. Thankful for him to be here, to be able to be a starter or a backup, whatever may come to play with it. But Malachi has what it takes to help our football team win, right? He's a year late, you know what I'm saying? Year late, but I'm thankful that Malachi's here.
Fran, that was a guy who, confidence-wise, he needed some building up, and you played a big part in that. What's so different about him now as opposed to when he first got there?
I mean, he knows we care about him. He knows I love him. We got to grow and know each other over these past months and just being around each other. So just the time we spend together, right? He knows that I genuinely care and love him, and it's not BS. So same guy for him every day, and I think kids need that, right? When you're going through stuff and you're in college and you're away from home and you're trying to figure it out, it's nothing like being able to just go to your head coach's office whenever you want to be able to talk to him or call him whenever you want, or I'm calling you that same way. So I think that he just feels the genuine love that we have, and not just from the coach, from me as the head coach, but that comes from all the position coaches, all the coaches on the team, our administration. Like, everybody's always around. We just make sure that it's a good family feel, and I think that's important for all young men, especially when they're on this new journey and chapter of their life. Amari's really, really good. I think he's really pushing this whole piece. Like, Amari's really good, super talented. He's a leader naturally. Very thankful for him being here. He's different. He's a gunslinger. This kid can play football. right? He's a good football player. So Amari's really, really good. He comes from that athletic background. Though his mom is a baller, and she's a coach. He was a point guard. So he's done a good job. And Danny is Syracuse, right? So he's working. He gives everything he got every day. I mean, this is where he was born and raised at. So it means a lot to him to be here. Just in the process of just trying to.
Okay, so that's Fran Brown today on the quarterbacks. He gave a little comment there about Danny Lauder at the end as well, of course, who's got Syracuse connections, is wearing number 21 to honor the late, great Lawrence Moten, so we appreciate that. Chris, of all those things that Fran just said about both Malachi and Amari, the thing that really grabbed me was when he kind of looked at Javon and said, a year late, right? Like the qualities of what I have in these quarterbacks, this is what I needed here last year because they just didn't have a true bet. They thought they did, right? Like this time last year, we were talking about a competition between Steve Angeli and Ricky Collins. Collins won the starting job out of spring. Remember, they added Steve Angeli out of spring ball. That window no longer exists, but it did last year. And that competition quickly swung Steve Angeli's way. So to hear him say a year late, I think, and I don't want to speak for Fran, but what he's clearly indicating there is I got some depth here. I got some choices. I got two guys behind my starter that can really ball.
I thought it was interesting, and I am not at all trying to give credence to the idea that Steve Angeli is not going to be the starter in week one. But like Fran did say when he was talking about Malachi Nelson, well, whether it's as a starter or a backup.
He did say that.
Which, to me, makes me think that he's maybe more in the competition than Amari Odom, that he might be running second, that is a more feasible jump for him to make than Amari Odom to make. Now, that said, like I also think there's some of the whole, we're going to say that everything's a competition, even though we all know who's going to win the competition. Everybody's competing for their jobs every day, typical football mindset there. But it was interesting to me that word came out so naturally from him in that moment.
Malachi Nelson's been around the block a few times. He's been at Boise State. He's been at USC. He's been at UTEP. He's got experience on the field. I talked to Malachi last week, and he said he's never felt more comfortable somewhere. And I think a lot of these things are, the athletes are trained to speak to the media. But I felt a genuine vibe from him about he feels healthy. He feels confident. He feels like he's being treated well, as Fran noted there in that comment. He said he's playing free, just playing the game. And when I've watched the quarterbacks, not that Steve Angeli is a slouch here, Chris, but Nelson to me is the most pure thrower among the quarterbacks. He's just got a fluid, pure motion. Not that Angeli doesn't. Steve Angeli, more than green boxes, all the mechanics of what you want in a starting quarterback. But Nelson has a fluidity to how he throws the ball. There's a polish to how he throws the ball. Same thing with Amari Odom, by the way. I want to put him right in this conversation. Amari Odom won, 10 games at Kennesaw State last year, won a conference championship, has led a football team. Again, has to make the upgrade, as many of the names we mentioned in the wide receiver room and another player we're going to talk about here shortly has to do. But Nelson carries himself like a starter. He talks like a starter, and in some ways has flashed and looked like what a QB1 can be. This is what you want in camp to push your starter, and God forbid if Steve Angeli goes down again.
Yeah, I mean, he was the number one recruit, number one quarterback recruit in the country coming out of high school, right? So from a tools perspective, like his are going to be exceptional because that's what gets you, the recruiting rankings. We also saw last year the tools aren't everything, right? From a pure thrower standpoint, like Ricky looked better than Steve, last preseason, but we all saw who the better quarterback was in terms of understanding what he was seeing, making the right reads, throwing the ball to the right place. But I'm with you. From a tools standpoint, Malachi Nelson looks tremendous.
I have not seen enough real football to make any kind of declaration on who the number 2 is, but it's an important race because, as we know, history tells us the number 2 quarterback is going to get on the field at Syracuse one way or the other. So something we'll continue to track here as camp goes along here in New Hampshire approaches on September 5th. Chris, switching over to the defensive side of the ball, you wrote a bit about this in your newsletter, and I want to give you the floor a little bit here because we talked to John Scott, so the co-defensive coordinator, focuses in on the defensive line last week, and certainly Keyshawn Johnson came up. Keyshawn Johnson, FCS All-American, 13 and a half sacks last year. This is a Syracuse defense that desperately needs some pass rush. There's a defense that was just on the field too much last year with the offense just completely falling apart after Angeli's injury. They just couldn't get to the quarterback. They couldn't turn the ball over. They just were overwhelmed in so many ways. Injuries started to pile up. It was just one thing after the other. Murphy's Law certainly applied, right? So one of the key things that they had to improve was the pass rush. And Keyshawn is an interesting guy because the way that John Scott described him is, and I don't want to misquote him, but it was basically just because he is smaller doesn't mean he plays small. Mm-hmm. He's listed at 6'3", but Scott admitted he's probably all of 6'1", about 235, 240. So he might be one of the smaller defensive ends in the ACC, but could be an effective one if he uses his tools correctly as he did up against some FBS competition a year ago.
Yeah, he's really, he strikes me as really like a boomer bust player on the defensive line. That he could be really, really, 13 and a half sacks at any level is really impressive. He had a sack when they played Oklahoma State. He had a sack against UTEP. Those were the two teams they played FBS games against. So 2 games against those teams, 2 sacks. So he got them. He didn't just do it against FCS teams. He did it against everybody. And 13 and a half sort of speaks for itself. That said, based on who Phil Steele projected to be on the starting defensive ends in the ACC this year, he'd be the smallest defensive end in the entire league. So how's he going to hold up in the run? Is he a 3-down player, or is he going to have to be somebody that you run on the field in pass rush situations and hope that the other team makes a substitution so you can get him out there? I think he's just a really interesting player in terms of how he'll do. Because I think, I know, they bring back a lot of guys on the defensive line who they're high on, but they don't bring back a lot of production, and they don't have a lot of guys that have done it. And he is a guy that has at least done it. So I just think he's going to have a big season if this team is going to have a good year.
It's not an apples to apples comparison, but what this defense needs is a Fidel Diggs type of presence, somebody that they're getting after the quarterback. Because some of the guys they brought in, Dylan Fontes from Maryland, who we've heard good things about. Rashard Perry comes back, and some of the names on the defensive line, they're not exactly labeled pass rushers first. And Syracuse has a defense now. Vince Karras has discussed it. We caught up with Perry Eliano today, the new defensive backs coach, and Vince Karras makes no mistake about it. Chris Peel and whoever it is in his defense, in this case, it's Chris Peel, Demetrius Samuel Jr. These are 2 of the better corners in the ACC. They're on an island, and we're letting our guys get after it because we trust them to lock this thing down. And Syracuse has a deep secondary that it's measured by what we see on paper and what we've seen on the field. Chris Peel is a projected first-round draft pick, can give you that extra second, which could be an eternity in college football, to get to the quarterback. And there's some good quarterbacks that Syracuse is going to face this year. And it was Andy Staples who ranked the top 10 quarterbacks in the ACC. Syracuse will face 7 of them. And by the way, that doesn't even include CJ Carr at Notre Dame, who they're going to finish the season with. So getting to the quarterback one way or the other, no matter how they do it, if it's a collective 11 is one thing, as Vince Karras likes to emphasize, the philosophy of his defense, or a Diggs type player, if that's Johnson, if that's Adelaide, if that's Jamie Tremble, that just gets to the quarterback, it is a desperately needed thing. But it's an example, Chris, as we went through a lot of the names in the receiver room. Syracuse is counting on a number of players to make that step up. And that's the portal era, right? That's the chance you take. That's the investment that you make, right? That we're going to put you on the field, and we think you're a guy that can make that jump up. Now, Oklahoma State and UTEP went a combined 3-20 last year.
Not great teams.
I should note that. They're not great teams. But Oklahoma State, in particular, has some money and recruits high-level 4- and 5-star guys. And Johnson graded well against them. So he's at least shown us he can do it. We're just not completely in the dark about whether he can or not.
Yeah. And, those young guys, Nisi Ogbapour, Nathan Niandoro, like it's just a big jump for them to go from guys that played a little bit and flashed to thinking that they are going to be true difference makers this year. Like it's just that is a big jump. So to me, it is probably the Tumiche, Adeleye, and Keyshawn Johnson who are the more likely, guys if the season is going to go the way Syracuse wants
They
it to.
are high on Nisi, but this is why I wished we had preseason football in college, because coaches are high on everybody, right? They take their opportunity. We talked to one assistant coach, each one once during camp, and they take that opportunity to really talk up certain guys, right? And Fran talks up certain guys.
And he was talking up his young guys late last year. Which is like, probably true, but also like, what are you going to do at that point in the year when you're 3-9?
He's also a coach who's recruiting 24 hours a day, and every time there's a microphone in front of his face. But everybody's been high on Nisi in a way that makes me say he's making plays, not just like we like this guy. So something to keep an eye on there. Chris, a few comments from our insiders here before we exit stage left. And being a Syracuse Sports Insider, let me just remind you guys, you can see it there on your screen. If you're checking it out on YouTube, gives you direct text message access to me anytime. What do you want Chris, Javon, and I to ask Syracuse football players and coaches? You let us know. You just want to shoot the breeze and talk SU sports. What did we see at camp? You're getting reports, you're getting videos, and pretty soon we're going to be there. Your comments highlighted exclusively on our live Syracuse football post-game shows we'll be doing after every Syracuse football game and into basketball season as well. Being a Syracuse Sports Insider has all sorts of benefits, and we would love for you to join the party. Please join today. It's just $3.99 a month to be an insider. You can try it free for 2 weeks. See how you like it. Try it. Use that as your preseason before Syracuse football gets underway on September 5th. See how you like it, and then we'd love for you to join our growing community of some of the more passionate Syracuse sports fans out there. Just some instant reaction to Justus Ross-Simmons, that news coming out, and fans kind of expressing what they would like to see there, Chris. Peter C. said, I'd love to see him return. I never got the feeling that he had a chance to show just how much he was capable of contributing. Jack says, I guess we know now who will fill Wiltfong's spot. You can never have too many wide receivers. Mike V loves JRS. I know my guy Mike's a Rochester guy, so he's seen him for a bit there. He was better than people think. And I like this comment from Michael M. I think he kind of hits the nail on the head here. If all goes well, JRS could be this year's Jackson Meeks.
Physical, probably not going to run away from you, but big, physical at the point of contact, strong kid. That's a good one.
I like that. I like that from Michael. We would love to hear from you here on the Syracuse Sports Podcast and throughout the rest of training camp here. Chris, that's going to do it for this edition of Syracuse Sports, our Syracuse football training camp update. But we will be hitting the pod a couple more times before the end of camp. News as it breaks, reaction as needed here. Please follow Chris, Javon, and I on syracuse.com with all the latest. We'll continue to follow this Justus Ross-Simmons story and see where that goes. I think we're both of the belief that those I's are going to get dotted, those T's are going to get crossed, and we could see him on the field by the end of the week, depending on how this process goes. But we'll keep you updated on that, so please check that out. Please subscribe, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, wherever you prefer to get your podcast so you don't miss a thing. We had Casey Powell on the podcast last week. Great one-on-one conversation with the new Lemoyne coach, a couple other training camp updates that Javon and I have done. So keep up on all the latest here on Syracuse Sports as well. That's going to do it for this edition, though. Thanks to Chris Carlson. Thanks to you guys for checking it out. Thanks to our Syracuse Sports Insiders, as always. And we'll talk to you next time, guys.